Hey friends, this is the Miss Wolfie from our Half Acre Homestead, and if I seem a little stiff, it's because yesterday I woke up with my neck and in between my shoulder and my spine all seized up. Thank you, fibromyalgia. It only lets up sometimes, especially this time of year, it only lets up long enough to spit on its hands. And that day I had the two bad weeks with my leg. Two of the days were extremely bad. And Sunday was a good day. I managed to get a lot of work done. It wasn't necessarily physical labor, thank goodness, but I got a lot of work done. And I woke up yesterday with my neck and shoulder all stiff. And it's not too bad today, but I'm still in pain. So if I'm moving oddly while I'm sitting here, that's why, because that's as far as I can turn my head that way. I can get it that far, and I can't straighten my shoulders and lift my chin. I can lower it almost to my chest. But anyway, that's got nothing to do with what we're doing here. My goat Periwinkle. Now, I have had a lot of people email me and tell me that this was horrible, that she has CL, which is caseous lymphadenitis, and we doubt very much that's what it is. It is not. I've looked at a lot of videos. I've done a lot of research. I've talked to a lot of goat people. I phoned the lady I bought the goat from. We've gone through the history of every goat I've ever had. And what it comes right down to is we think she has an abscess in one of her teeth, her lower teeth, because that's where it is. It's right. It's not on the lymph glands, which are under the jaw right here. It's on the jaw right here. And when I lanced it, it was pus. It wasn't really stinky. Like someone asked me, was it really stinky? It wasn't really stinky, but then I didn't put my nose that close to sniff it. It wasn't liquid, but it was runny enough that it could be squeezed out in a like silly string, but a little more liquidy than that. I mean, I don't really want to go into details. But we think we've solved the mystery of where it came from. Our Christmas tree. We know our goats love trees. Anybody who knows anything about goats knows that they would rather eat rose bushes than grass. So when we first built the barn in the paddock, the goats stripped all the bark off the trees and took off all the lower branches and leaves and pine needles right from wherever they could reach. They would put their front feet right up as high as they could reach and nibble at the leaves and stuff. So after Christmas, because we know folks who do this all the time, when our Christmas tree was stripped, like of decorations, now this was a fresh tree that Papa had cut me down the week before Christmas. But after being in the house for a couple of weeks, of course it's going to get dry. So we stripped it, we undecorated it, we stripped it, and Papa put it in the pen with the goats for them to have a treat. And they stripped it bare, everything but the branches and the trunk. And because I have been limited until now about how much time I go out to the barn, okay, because Papa fixed the floor so that I can go in the barn. And hopefully this year we're going to put a concrete floor in. But I've been able to go out to the barn now. I never saw the tree in the pen, and I never saw the tree after the trunk came out of the pen. So it never dawned on me that she probably had either a twig or a pine needle, because they're brittle and they're sharp. Anybody who undecorates a spruce tree when it's dry knows exactly what I'm talking about. They prick you. They give me a rash wherever they touch me, wherever they prick me. So we think she's either got a twig or a pine needle down in her gum. Now, because we lanced it this weekend, we lanced the outside this weekend and poured the infection off and squeezed the infection off and washed it with peroxide. And because she's pregnant, we really don't want to stress her out too much. However, this coming weekend, and I went out to the barn today, and she had knocked the scab off, and there was just a little bit of blood, but there seemed to be no seepage of any kind of pus whatsoever, so I'm really grateful about that. I should have said infection because pus is a nasty word. But if that swelling, the external swelling comes back, we will lance it again. However, if this little lump has not gone down by this weekend, I'm going to have to get Papa to get her in a headlock and open her mouth and me go in with a flashlight and check and see if there's anything in the gum or between the gum and the tooth that is causing this problem. I'm almost positive. I'm almost positive that's what it is. Because that was my first thought. What the heck did she chew that would cause an abscess in her gum on her jaw? And I couldn't think of anything because I hadn't been out there when they had a Christmas tree treat. So, prayers are welcome. I know she's just a goat to you, but to me, she is, periwinkle, and she's the mother of my kids that are coming, and she's my milk. She's going to be my milk. So, and we've had a lot of loss. I mean, after we lost Clover, Blossom, and Oli, Periwinkle's my first real actual female milk goat since Clover and Blossom died. So it's really important that we get to the bottom of this. I know the vet has not gotten back to me yet, but I think this is a problem that we're going to be able to solve on our own. So, and having a conversation with another friend who emailed me, another one of my YouTube family, and you know who you are. She is a retired nurse. Whose husband has a lot of health issues, and of course they just keep throwing more and more medication at him. I think it is time, folks, that we take our health and welfare back into our own hands in a lot of respects. Because I was told that because of his diabetes and all these other illnesses, and he's retired, that if he doesn't go to the doctor and he doesn't follow the prescribed medications and all these things, he could lose his Social Security. I think that's ridiculous. And I'm really, really grateful to this day that I had a lot of family members, not Howie, not my kids, but a lot of family members who encouraged me to seek disability. And I refused. Why did I refuse to seek disability? Because provincial disability is kind of like welfare, and it has all those ties that are with it, and federal disability is extremely difficult to get, but that's not the reason I went through it. And they put you through an emotional roller coaster. They pretty much batter you into the point, and they turn you down, and only the most tenacious people, or people who have advocates that will fight for them, those are pretty much the only people who get disability in this country, unless of course you're a quadriplegic Native woman over 80 years old. Then you can get disability, kind of thing. It's not an easy route. My point is, Papa makes enough money that when we're careful and we budget and we do a lot of raising of our own food and we're frugal, we manage fine. Yes, we've had rough times. Yes, we've been bankrupt. But when you come through a bankruptcy, when you come through a bankruptcy, you learn a lot about what you need and what you want, and the difference between the two. My point also is, if I was on disability, I would probably be on a lot more medication than I am on now. And I am going to share with you that I have been on antidepressants now for 22 years. And that may come as a shock. It may not surprise some people, but that was my GP when Briar was an infant. And it took her 3 months, her and I, 3 months of a daily log list that I went through every day and had to fill out with Howie's help at the end of the day, because there's times when I would have an episode where I wouldn't necessarily remember the intensity of it. Now, contrary to popular opinion, depression doesn't mean you're just down all the time. You can have really, really good days and really, really, I can't get out of bed days. And that is when you're pushing on the bipolar disorder. And my family GP had me fill out this list for an entire month straight, which I threw away because after filling it out, because once I read it, I thought she was going to lock me in the loony bin. But we did this, started out with these tests because I trusted her, and B, we thought it was PMS. And so when I had done filling out this 40 question questionnaire for a month, and the dog didn't eat it the first time, and it didn't get accidentally thrown in the fire the second time, because I was terrified. You know, people asking questions about your mental health is not prone to making you feel safe, right? So anyway, the third time, that's why I said it took 3 months. The third time I finally filled it out, you know, honestly. And by the time it was all filled out, my doctor looked at it and it laid out as a graph. And she said, yeah, you've got some really emotional swings here, but this isn't PMS because you're doing it all over the place. And it was her opinion that I should go to a psychiatric professional and be tested for bipolar disorder. And I refused. So she fell back on, well, let's try some antidepressants. And it took 6 months to get to the level where I was somewhat normal. And I stuck with it. And I wouldn't go any further. Now, do I wish I had not gone on antidepressants? Absolutely. I wish that marijuana had never been illegal, because I probably would have been able to stabilize myself with marijuana, because to me, marijuana is not an addiction issue like painkillers and mood-altering drugs and alcohol. Those things are all very, you know, I don't like chemicals, period. Whereas natural chemicals like the chemicals in marijuana are fine. However, after being on antidepressants for 22 years, it's almost, many people start out, let me put it this way, many people start out, and my doctor told me this, many people start out on antidepressants under the supervision of their doctor to retrain the brain to reproduce, or the levels of serotonin that your brain is not actually producing properly. And once the antidepressants help you restabilize the serotonins in your brain, you can actually gradually go off them. But given my family history, and I'm not going to go into it, but yes, there is mental illness in my family past, on both sides of my family. She told me I'd probably be on them the rest of my life. Now, instead of retraining my brain to produce whatever chemical it needs to produce to keep me on an even keel, these drugs pretty much feel like they have burned new neural pathways or something. My brain has become reliant on them. Once I was legally allowed to use marijuana, I did try and go off my antidepressants. And in a 3 to 6 month period, I got down to a half dosage of what I was normally taking. And it wasn't pretty. I was close to breaking teeth from gritting them and not being able to be stable. So, you know, if I had known then what I know now, pharmaceuticals would not be a part of my life today. But as it is, that's the only pharmaceuticals I have. Occasionally I'll take a Tylenol When, like right now, congratulations to my son Briar, who's right now living at home but looking for an apartment, who now has full-time work. Yay! But I have a lot of his work schedule is from 4 till midnight, and I have to drive him to and from work. And at the end of the day, when I've dropped him off and brought him home, and then gone and picked him up and brought him home, or whatever the case may be, I've driven close to 100 kilometers, or probably 60 miles. And so I can't take my medical marijuana during the day for something like this. I have to have Tylenol. So my medical marijuana, when I'm driving and stuff, is reserved for bedtime only. Which is the most important time for me to have it, for one simple reason, is it helps my muscles relax enough that I get sleep. And good sleep is a restorative thing, especially with things like fibromyalgia. So I guess what my point is it's time to think about 50 or 60 years ago, when my mother was alive. And her mother, well, she wasn't alive, but my grandmother and my mother, they all had ways of doing things so that, because you know what? If we got a cold, Mom didn't run to the pharmacy, okay? Things like neocitrin and liquid penicillin and shit, that stuff did not enter into our home until after my mother died. And my father was learning how to be a single father and pay bills and cook meals and go to work and all these things. So when one of us got sick, he would ask somebody and they'd say, oh, he'd go to the drugstore and they'd say, well, here, take this. And he'd go, oh, okay. But I was like 11 years old before I even had neocitrin. I was 11 years old before I had penicillin. So my point being was, what did my mother do? What did my grandmother do? When I got a sore throat or a tickle in my throat, my mom would take a big spoon of honey and put it on my tongue and she said, hold it there and let it melt and only swallow as it melts. Simple things like that. But we have been conditioned to running to the drugstore. Both of my sons do not like medication whatsoever. They would rather muscle through a headache or a migraine than take anything for it. The only time my son Briar will take something like Robaxacet or Tylenol is when his migraines gotten to the point where he's going to throw up. And his migraines are usually vision related because of his glasses. Like if he breaks his glasses and he still tries to work on his computer, he'll get a migraine. So anyway, my point is my vet not getting back to me, and these last 7 years on YouTube and becoming familiar with the internet have taught me a lot. And what it has taught me is that we have become way too reliant on third parties like doctors and pharmacists and vets to deal with stuff that we should by 9 times out of 10 deal with ourselves. And maybe we wouldn't be on so many pharmaceuticals because they're being pushed at us as solutions or treatments when they're really not. They're just quick fixes that in the long run do more damage than good. This is the Mrs. Wolfie from our half-acre homestead saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it is broke, try and fix it yourself before you seek a third party. Why? Use your common sense, folks. I'm not telling you not to go to the doctor. I'm not telling you not to seek treatment. I'm not telling you to go off your prescribed medications. But I am telling you that you got to trust your own instincts and ask questions before you take advice from practically a total stranger. Take care. God bless.